Well, hello again. Welcome to Horror in Detail. Today we are going to share Wendigo horror stories. First story. This story was shared by you/bloody_Valkyrie. The hunt for a Wendigo. Ever since I found out about Wendigos, I've been obsessed with them. They're mythical creatures that are rooted in the Algonquin-based Native American folklore. They have heightened senses, they're extremely fast, unnaturally large, and strong. These are all advantages that help them stalk their prey. I'm so intrigued by them because no one knows if they actually exist. I've spent hours researching about them. I know pretty much everything about them. The Wendigo is pretty much the embodiment of gluttony, always consuming yet never satisfied. They're always at the point of starvation. I've read about so many skinwalker and Wendigo encounters, but no one actually knows if the stories are true, so neither do I. That's why Rose, Charles, and I made a group for hunting mythical creatures. We go out into the forest sometimes to look for the creatures. We haven't had any luck yet. I love to talk to my grandpa about them, and hearing his stories about them are always the best. Every time he tells me a story, at the end of it he says, "Don't go near the northern forests of the Atlantic coast and Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada." The thing about this is that I am too curious, and I live near the forest he talks about. It's 25 minutes away walking distance. I know my way around the forest because of my map, and it's so close to my house. I've been there before with my friends, but we've never been that deep into it. The doorbell rings as I get a message. I open my phone. The message says, "I'm here." I walk downstairs to the front so I can open the door. As I look through and open the door, I see Rose and Charles. "Hi," said Rose eagerly. Charles groans, "Hey, are you ready yet?" "We just walked here to make sure that you were ready," Rose added. "Yeah, come inside really quick, I have some stuff I need to grab," I insisted. Rose exclaimed, "I got a new tracker this weekend." "Is it actually a good one this time?" Charles murmured. Rose states sarcastically, Yes, I would totally buy a broken tracker." "I'm messing around with you, geez," Charles snickered. We all head out of the house and in the direction of the forest. About 30 minutes later we make it to the edge of the forest. I take a deep breath, looking into the slight fog and menacing atmosphere of the viridian-tinted forest. Minutes passed until I broke my eyes free before entering the forest. This time the atmosphere was different. It was so thick, eerie, and it felt alive. I've never actually believed that I would encounter a Wendigo. We just enjoy going exploring and pretending that we'll run into it. We walked through the forest for what felt like hours. I knew it was the deepest we've ever gone in, and I had lost where we were on the map. Rose flustered with concern, "Hey, we've been walking for hours. Are you sure you know where we're going or how to get back?" "Yeah, don't worry, Rose, I have my map and compass with me." We came into the forest from the west and were heading north toward the caves, I reassured. Everything looks the same around here," Rose scolded. "I mean, they are all just trees and bushes," Charles smirked. We walk deeper into the forest as dusk falls upon us, the golden-pink horizon illuminated over the forest, leaves and shrubs creating beautiful shadows. We walked for a little while until we stumble upon what looks like a slaughtered animal. All we see is red, blood red. The cedar trunks of the trees, the mossy green ground, the evergreen shrubs. Those colors were no longer vibrant greens, only objects doused in blood. I can't believe my eyes. There was no words, just silence. I couldn't tear my eyes from this gruesome mutilated mess of whatever it was. Could an animal really do something like this? I questioned if we were alone in these woods. Minutes passed with terror in our bones, dead silence, no animals in sight, not a single sound carried through the forest as the sun falls behind the horizon. Until I hear a few branches breaking from in front of the bloodbath. I look ahead of the mess into the darkness only to see two bright frosty-colored eyes peering into my soul from within the obsidian-shaded forest. More branches break through the forest ahead of us, approaching closer, slowly stalking us in the darkness. As I look closer at this horrendous monster's outline as it approaches, I see something hanging from its mouth. I think that it's a hunk of flesh, but I can't make it out. I fix my gaze towards its hand and I'm instantly filled with terror. I knew what this was. I see a hunk of flesh in its mouth, its unnaturally long and bony fingers are gripping onto a human head. It was the thing I've been looking for. I can't believe it. I never thought I would actually run across one of them. That face, the abnormally large body with skin stretched across all of its bones. I knew right then and there I had to run. I had to run for my life. It was now or never. Ah! Rose squealed as she realized what was in the forest with us. I turned around as fast as I could. My friends and I started running for our lives. Shortly after, I could hear it intently chasing after us. Branches snapping behind us as we run with no direction. The Wendigo lets out an inhumanly screech. My heart is pounding as we all hide, hoping the creature doesn't find us. We're all so exhausted and out of breath, yet trying not to move or make a sound. We listen closely as we hear cracking of twigs inching closer to our vicinity. That's when I heard the most eerie sound in my life. Not too far into the woods, I heard a soft voice of a little girl asking for help. "Help, please, someone come help me," pleaded the small girl. It can mimic voices. What is this? I mean, there can't be a little girl out here this deep in the forest all by herself, right? Without hesitation, Rose jumps out of her hiding spot and goes to try and help the small girl. "Hey! Little girl dash," Rose murmured. Within second of her speaking, I hear her vocals cut out and I heard nothing else but the horrific sounds of something I couldn't even imagine. I look out from my hiding spot to see Rose completely mangled and her blood all over the soil. I couldn't believe it. Why did she do that? She knew it was after us. I can't help but stare, and my friend is just gone like that and I couldn't even help her. I'm so sorry, Rose. We should have never come here. I brought you here and I never should have done that. Hey guys, you can come out now, it's safe. The monster ran away, Rose reassured. Oh my. Rose. How could it do this to us? It stole her voice and now it's trying to lure us out. These things are sick. I heard what that thing did to her. She can't be alive. There's no way I could let it trick me like this. I look hastily at the creature from my hiding spot as I wait for my opportunity to run out of this place for good. It felt like I must have been waiting there for hours, waiting for this thing to leave because it knew we were hiding somewhere there. Through the dark, ominous forest there was stray beams of light and laughter approaching. The creature heard the laughter and branches and decided that it was done here. It went to go after whoever was over there, so that's when we took our chance to run west and get the hell out of that forest. I ran until my feet blistered. At the sight of lights I sighed in relief, then collapsed to the ground as I'm panting, choking on the fresh air, bawling my eyes out with Charles. I feel sorry for those people, but I barely made it out alive myself. Rose wasn't as lucky as we were. I collected myself after crying and shaking on the ground for what felt like ages. I got up, gave the forest my last goodbye and went on my way through the dark night illuminated by only stars in the sky and the empty street lights. Never again have Charles or me mentioned this to each other or anyone again. It's buried as deep in our memories as far as they could go. Second story. This story was shared by you/Sleepless from Sundown. An encounter with a Bigfoot. There is a ghost town high up in the Montana mountains, not far from Yellowstone. Few people know about it. The only road in and out fell into disrepair long ago. To get there requires an intermediate climbing skill set. It can only be attempted when conditions are warm and dry, which around here amounts to a window of a couple of months each year. My grandfather spoke of it once. The story lacked detail, the particulars lost in the fog of memory, and Pop was never one to embellish once his recollection failed. It was a story he heard as a boy. Of a silver mine up in the mountains. Of a creature that called the forest home. It was no bear. It was no wolf. Whatever it was refused to share the land with the miners and the fledgling town built to support them. What followed was a massacre. The survivors abandoned the town and never returned. Last summer, Taylor and I hiked and camped for a week within Yellowstone National Park. We lucked out with the weather. We went off-grid and loved every minute. The last night, beside a whispering fire, we promised we would do it again. As the firmament above turned about the North Star, I told her about the ghost town. She breathed the story in. That's where we would go. A harsh winter is rendered tolerable by the promise of spring. It was the summer, though, that held my attention. A long break from school and a week in the mountains. It is a rare treat to do precisely what you most desire. The warmth of the sun brought with it an unbridled giddiness. The wait was almost over. We drove as far as we could, winding our way up between mountains stripped of the white caps of winter and smeared with green and blue and brown. Taylor rolled the car to a stop on the shoulder of a lonely dirt track. The crisp mountain air tempered the warmth of the sun. We shouldered our packs and climbed. What is left of the ghost town, as far as we knew, did not amount to much. The rangers fingered it on a map, though none had been up there. The location was an inherited knowledge. My grandfather could only guess as to the whereabouts. It's up there somewhere, he had said. When I told him our plans and that it was his story that inspired our destination, a smile gave way to pensiveness. He told me to be careful. I told him not to worry. The spruce trees thinned the higher we climbed. We scrambled up a rocky shoulder and Taylor checked the map. We were making good ground. If luck fell on our side we would get there by sunset. An impassable chunk of vertical rock face led to a detour that cost us a couple of hours. It would have to be tomorrow. We camped in a clearing with a view of our destination across the plain. In the distance the trees huddled together as if against the cool night air and obscured the X on the map. I wondered what we would find. There was a good chance little remained. Perhaps a few stumps where a rudimentary wooden house once stood. We turned our attention to the sky and watched for shooting stars and agreed it didn't matter. Taylor woke me in the dead of the night. The half-moon hung low over the mountains. Her whispered words came out in bursts. My groggy brain took its time assembling them into something coherent. She had heard something. The crack of a tree branch, sharp and loud as if it had been snapped like a twig. And now there was a light. In the pale, silver glow of the moon, I followed her outstretched hand. Hanging just above the horizon, a yellow light flickered. It gave the impression of a candle burning in a window. Except out here there were no windows and no one to burn a candle. I could only offer vague solutions. An optical trick played by some atmospheric anomaly. A hunting group around a campfire, though this was not a usual place for such things. Whatever it was, it lay far enough away to pose no danger. What neither of us said is that it lay in the direction of our travel. We lay back down. For a time I opened my right eye at intervals to check if the light remained. It did. And then I slept. We barely spoke in the morning and set off in the direction of the ghost town. I was anxious to uncover a mundane explanation for the light we saw the night before. The remains of a campfire, or some hermit living alone up in the mountains. The way Taylor kept her eyes on the trees ahead told me she was thinking the same. We entered into the thick patch of forest. The trees grew close and blocked the sun. Stray branches scratched at our bare legs. The ground undulated and I found myself instinctively following it down, and soon I was disoriented. Taylor took out the map and the GPS. Inexplicably, the GPS gave no signal and she turned her attention to the map. I ventured forwards until my boot stubbed against something solid. After a glance down I jumped back. A wooden stake driven into the hard earth. It had cracked about a foot above the ground, and whatever once had been above I could only guess at. But then more emerged from between the trees. To my left a clearing full of them. Wooden crosses arranged haphazardly, dozens of them. I called out to Taylor, my voice thin and small. I stepped through the cemetery, careful not to step on the ground directly in front of any cross, an old superstition difficult to kick. The crucifixes were rudimentary, simple planks of wood. Some were overtaken by rot, others preserved well enough to read an inscription across the horizontal member. Names and dates. The congregation in the back corner contained no less than 6, all with the same date. December 7, 1891. The massacre of my grandfather's story, I thought. Probably cholera, Taylor said, voicing her own explanation. If there is anything left of that town, we must be close. Beyond the cemetery the spruce thinned and the ground rose. We crested the slope and there it was. The remains of the town stood on a plateau of hard earth. A few of the wooden houses remained as complete structures, the timber warped and cracked and bleached the color of the ground. A few more were relieved of roofs and parts of walls, leaving a fragile relic of what had been. My eyes swept up the sloping mountain beyond, where a rusted red limb of mining equipment poked above the rocks. Taylor approached the closest house and pushed the door. The gentle force tore the door from its hinge and it slapped against the dirt interior of the house. Needles from the surrounding spruce littered the floor. She ventured inside. I lingered on the outside and examined a pair of grooves in the timber siding. Weather had worn the edges. I ran my fingers down them and wondered what could have made such marks. "This is cool," Taylor said. She was right. Some of the houses contained old tables and chairs and bed frames left behind before the move back down the mountain. We found little else save a lone glass bottle half buried in the ground. We dumped our gear beside the house closest to the cemetery and set about scaling the rock in the direction of the mining equipment beyond. We found a crude staircase cut into the rock and powered to the top. What remained of the mining equipment amounted to an A-frame with a bucket on rails to extract the dirt and a few abandoned picks. A shaft cut into the earth and was soon swallowed by darkness. We could only guess at the depth. I scrambled up a slope beyond and sat on a small rock platform with a lookout over the valley below, my legs dangling over the side. In the distance the mountains looked blue. We lingered there for a time, until the sun kissed the peaks to the west. Tonight we would camp at the ghost town, and we would stay a few days. The first sign of trouble was my red windbreaker lying on the ground beside a half-collapsed house at the back of the ghost town. When we left, the windbreaker was packed tight into my backpack. Something had messed with my bag. It wouldn't be the first time. Squirrels or birds had done it before, but I was sure the windbreaker was deep down in my bag. It would take a persistent squirrel to get to it. A second option had my heart thumping. A bear. Our gear was a mess. Our clothes and sleeping bags were strewn across the ground. The small gas burner was upturned. My backpack had 2 parallel tiers running top to bottom. I ran my hand over them like I had the 2 grooves in the siding on the house. This was no squirrel. Taylor picked up her black pan and turned it in her hand. She showed me. One side buckled inwards. Taylor gripped it and pulled at the metal to bring it back into shape. It did not budge. A bear, I said. It had to be. I fumbled in my bag for the canister of bear mace. My muscles tensed and my hands worked frantically until I found it, stored where I had left it. At least we still had that. We searched the ground and looked for bear tracks. The telltale wide paws and grouping of front and back legs together. I found a depression in the ground. I hovered my foot above the footprint, my shoe dwarfed in comparison. And no second print. Whatever came into our camp did so on 2 legs, and at the base of those 2 legs were extraordinary feet. It can't be true. Someone is messing with us. Taylor inspected the print. Neither of us had ever seen anything like it. I looked west and the sun was already gone, the sky turning a shade of orange at the horizon. Light would fade fast. We had few options. Whatever it was that had been here was not here now. We had planned to camp outside under the stars, but with something stalking the forest, we rolled our sleeping bags and mats inside one of the houses. At least it provided some semblance of security. We did not risk a fire. Darkness overwhelmed the light quickly and completely. Clouds rolled in from the west at nightfall. A light breeze carried a faint hint of moisture. The forecast had warned of possible storms. I stuck my head out one of the windows, and aside from a blurred smudge of the moon through the clouds, the sky gave no light. We were on edge. Inside the house it was a deep, pitch black. I set the canister of bear mace beside my pillow, periodically palming it to make sure it was still there. Every crack and rustle from the forest had us twitching and turning our ears to the sound. I buried my head between my knees and wondered how I could tolerate the hours left until morning. I apologized to Taylor for suggesting we come out here. She laughed it off. We'd get through it and have an amazing story to tell. Her voice trembled. I don't know what time I fell asleep. When I woke it was still dark and my pillow was wet. Light rain made a gentle rapping on the roof. A hole in the roof let through a small drip. I dragged my sleeping bag over to a dry section of floor. In the distance thunder rumbled, low and ominous. Then something else, closer. A crack from the forest. Not a twig, but something more substantial. And then a growl, low and deep. I shook Taylor awake. In the darkness we listened. Nothing. Had I dreamed it? No, I couldn't have. There was something out there. Should we risk turning on the torch? No. We had to be quiet. I closed my hands around the bare mace. The drumming on the roof intensified. The drip of the leak in the roof turned to a constant dribble. A flash lit up the sky, and on its heels a clap of thunder that shook the flimsy structure we had chosen as our protector. The door flew open. I let out an involuntary scream. In the strengthening wind the door flapped back and forth, rapping on the wall. I froze in place, fear rendering my muscles useless. Taylor made a rustling beside me, and I guessed she was moving for the door. Another flash of lightning confirmed my guess, the silhouette of Taylor fumbling in the dark for the door. She used the brief moment of light to gather her bearings and gripped the door. A second flash followed the first, and through the doorway a figure emerged. Big and black, it was no bear. In the moment of light it looked stationary, but my imagination soon put it in motion, lumbering for the open door. "Shut the door," I yelled. Taylor clapped shut the door, and a deep growl mixed with the thunder. "Help me," Taylor screamed. Her voice shifted my brain into gear. I jumped up and scrambled forwards and fell into the door. I braced my legs and pressed my shoulder against the old and cracked timber. "Did you see it?" I asked. "Yes." "What was that?" "I don't know." Guilt flooded my brain. It had been my idea to come out here. I had pushed for a second summer in the mountains. Taylor could have joined her college friends in Mexico. This trip had been, at least in part, a sense of duty for her. I thought of the cemetery and the dozens of graves. The 6 on a single day. The scratch marks on the house made by a powerful hand. The stories were true, at least in the important details. Something lived up here. Something that did not care to share its home with humans. Taylor's voice cut through my thoughts. Should we run? No. Run where? We had to stay together. The creature pushed at the door with such force I felt about as big and strong as a toddler. We pushed back and the door slammed back into place. The timber pinched at my shoulder. I felt with my hands and found a split in the wood. The door would not hold much longer. Through the torrent of rain the creature snorted and spat, its hot breath penetrating the crack in the door and blowing over my neck. It pushed a second time, and that was enough. We fell to the ground, fragments of the splintered door clattering to the floor around us. I landed heavy on my right side, the canister of bare mace spilling from my grasp and rolling away into the darkness. I crawled after it, feeling in the dark and expecting at any moment to be lifted in the air by my ankles. Behind me Taylor screamed. It had her. Finally, the edge of my index finger hit the cold steel of the canister. I fumbled it into my hands and stood. I saw nothing in the darkness. The rain beat on the roof and the wind howled and the creature snarled, and in among it all I found no compass. I prepared to fire the mace in random hope and hesitated a second, enough for a jagged fork of lightning to illuminate the sky. The animal held Taylor close to its chest in the corner of the room. I jumped a single step, and as the world went dark again I sprayed and hoped. The creature wailed in pain and Taylor thudded to the ground at my feet. Heavy footsteps sloshed on the sodden ground outside the house and then stopped. He wasn't gone yet. I stepped out into the rain. The waterlogged ground saturated my woolen socks. The rain fell thick and cold. A freezing wind sucked the warmth from my body. I listened. I waited. I shivered. The first dose may not have sent it fleeing to the forest, but a second might. Where was the lightning? Was the storm spent? A hand gripped my bicep. It pulled me close. Lightning lit up the sky. My face was inches from his. Eyes eerily human. A thick mat of black hair soaked from the rain. With my free hand I pushed the canister to his flat nose and sprayed. He threw his hands in the air and lifted me clean off the ground. For a moment I felt weightless and then came crashing back down. Soggy footfalls faded into the distance. It was gone. We huddled in the back corner of the house until daybreak. With the rising of the sun, the rain turned to drizzle and finally stopped. We kicked at the fragments of the splintered door. Outside, several vague footprints pressed into the mud, partially destroyed by the rain. We gathered our things and began the walk home. The crosses standing in the cemetery hammered home that we had been lucky. Before commencing our descent down the shoulder of rock I turned and looked back up the slope. In the gloom a lone light shone on the hill where the ghost town and the cemetery stood. Not a welcome light, but a warning. Third story. This story was shared by you/traditional Tao. We survived a Wendigo attack. I'm happy to see others also had these experiences. It's a bit like group therapy, in a very twisted way I guess. This isn't an AA meeting or anything. Years ago, when I was fresh out of high school, me and my friends went for a camping trip, since it'd be the last time we saw each other before college sent us on our separate ways. We had planned to go deep into the national forest in the mountains, and just enjoy ourselves for a few weeks. My friends who came along were Preston, a Native American who had several years of survivalist strategies under his belt. Jamie, a hunting and gun enthusiast like me, with a propensity for adventure. Mark, Preston's friend, not so much mine. He smoked a lot of drugs and seemed to be okay, but I was always on edge around him. With us we packed 2 tents, dried fruit, rice, jerky, camping supplies, and beer, along with a Mini 14 rifle, a Saiga 12 shotgun, 2 pistols, my Taurus Judge revolver, and Jamie's .357 revolver. We packed all of this into my battered BMW station wagon, with me being the driver. Stopping at a car park, we loaded up our gear on our backs and began going deep into the forest. The first day was uneventful. Preston found a good clearing for us to settle at. We set down our gear and set up the tents while Preston got to work with a cook fire. I was always good at setting up tents, so this wasn't a problem for me. Within 20 minutes, we had set up the basics of camp. I cracked open a beer and sat next to Preston, who had created a roaring fire. I smiled at him. "I'm gonna miss you, man." I patted his back. "Me too." "Let's enjoy this," he responded. Jamie and Mark were carrying on, exploring the surrounding area. At the time, I could have sworn I saw a pair of green eyes and antlers looking at me. I would come to regret not asking Preston in the coming days. I tried to forget as we sat down to dinner that night. Campfire curry, a mix of curry spices, frozen chicken we brought and prepared, and a few vegetables, along with a small pot of rice. As it was the first night, we ate all of our perishables. It was tasty for sure. Then, like we were kids once again, we roasted marshmallows and made s'mores. It was truly a very fun time, for sure. If only it would have lasted. That night was uneventful as well. I slept like a baby, and Preston, whom I shared a tent with, didn't seem to be bothered at all. The next morning, we packed up camp, and decided to head south, towards a large river with the intent of spending a few nights riverside. As we were in the remote wilderness, I handed Preston my Mini 14, and I myself carried the Saiga 12, slugs and buckshot alternated in its 10-round magazine. Jamie kept his .357, and I had my sidearm as well. We walked for what seemed like hours. The mistiness, overcast weather and lack of clear landmarks required we rely on GPS and compasses. As we headed south, I saw the look on Preston's face. He looked worried. "Preston, what's up, man?" I asked him. He had me get close and he whispered, "I dunno, man, I got a feeling that a bad omen is about to pass. Keep everyone in sight. I'll listen for anything." As he said that, we heard what sounded like a distant whooping noise. All of us looked around. In the distance behind us, I could have sworn I saw something shambling. It was too far to shoot with my shotgun, so I pointed at it and told Preston to shoot. "Shoot that thing." 3 shots from the Mini 14, and the smell of freshly fired ammunition filled my nostrils. Whatever it was got down on all fours and bounded away. "What was that?" Mark asked, shocked. Preston swore up and down in his native language, before he finally said, "That, my friends, is something truly evil. We need to hurry to the river." We ran for about 30 minutes, our pace slowed by the amount of heavy gear we carried. Preston looked from side to side, but found nothing as he did so. Soon, we reached the rushing river, and with that the fog seemed to dissipate. Preston looked around, shook his head, looked at his GPS and finally said, "The other side of the national forest is available to us across a hand tram a mile upstream. We can make it there before lunchtime if we hurry." "Preston, what's going on? What was that thing?" Jamie asked, concerned. "I can't be sure, but it's nothing good. I want to try and lose it across the tramway. Whatever that thing is, if it's anything like my family stories, it won't ford a river. We're going, that's final." Preston led the way upriver, keeping close to the shoreline. Eventually, we did find it. A large steel and wood car suspended over a wide expanse of river. I got in first, and wasted no time getting across. I watched the trail on the other side while Jamie went across next with some of the extra gear, and then finally Preston and Mark squeezed into the tram and got across. As I turned to leave, I saw Preston take out his bowie and he began hacking at the rope suspending the tram. "What are you doing, man? That's state property, that's a felony," I said, bewildered. "We can't have that thing follow us." He hacked at the rope until it snapped and the tram car fell with a loud clang into the river below. As we left and started heading east, I could have sworn I saw those green eyes again, but just for a moment, watching us. We made camp at a clearing on the edge of a hills-wide ridge. It gave us great views and visibility, but more importantly, as Preston stated, we can see anyone or anything coming. As he sat and made the fire he said, "We're doing watch rotations. That thing, I am genuinely afraid of it. I bet it's just a bear, Preston. Too many family stories." Mark guffawed. As I said previously, he was Preston's, not my, friend. I took the second watch, after Preston cooked a meal of rice pudding. I had no trouble staying up. Then Jamie. I sat up and talked with him for a while. He worried a little, and he expressed that he wanted to go home. I know what you mean, dude. This is too creepy. Mark took the last watch, my shotgun propped up next to the tent in case he needed it, or so Jamie told me. When we got up the next morning, Mark had disappeared. Immediately, we questioned Jamie, whose story checked out. He saw Mark up and watching. We waited, Preston reigniting the few vapors. He also pulled out a small can of pine tar and began making torches. "What are they for, Preston?" Jamie asked. "I'm sure of it, we've got a Wendigo." Preston replied. "A Wendigo? The fuck is that?" I replied. "A cannibalistic demon with green eyes, a deer skull for a head, and a thirst for human blood. They're also like skinwalkers, you know, like in True Blood. At the time, the TV show was popular." He explained. I became very scared, so that grabbed Mark and ate him. We'll wait for Mark for a few hours. Keep the guns locked and loaded. Do not let him approach within 200 feet of the campsite. I'm going out for a bit. You're crazy, Preston. I protested. He whispered in my ear, when I come back, ask me my favorite sailor. It's Saturn, for the record. He then approached Jamie and told him something that I knew I wasn't supposed to hear. Then he grabbed 2 torches, his knife, and he turned back to us. Wendigo do not like fire. Keep the fire going, there's plenty of sticks and wood right there for a few hours. I'll be back. Do not forget what I told each of you. If I can't answer it when I come back, shoot me. As he disappeared into the forest, I sat with Jamie, back to back. He had my Saiga, I had my Mini 14. For hours, we heard various sounds in the forest, including those whooping noises, the sound of what sounded like Mark, and what I thought was the sound of a distantly beating drum. By afternoon, we heard rustling in the forest, and none other than Preston returned, dirt smeared on his face, and a makeshift drum under his arm, with 1 torch left. He stopped short of the campsite when I raised my gun at him. What's this about, guys? It's me, Preston, he said. What is your favorite Final Fantasy protagonist? Jamie asked. Squall, of course. Jamie lowered his gun. What is your favorite sailor? I asked slowly and deliberately. Saturn, of course. I suppose this means Mark is still missing, yes, he responded. I lowered my gun and said, come on up, dude. And yeah, we heard whooping noises but no sign. Preston averted his gaze, it's hunting us. I confirmed the tracks, and my little serenade in tribal chants caused it to at one point come and look at me. How did you get away? I asked. I chased it with fire. They're afraid of it, remember, he responded. Do guns harm them? I asked slowly. It can injure them, but you really need fire or silver. We only have fire, as usual. We're going to burn one of the tents and drop some gear. We're going light. We're heading to the highway. It's 35 miles to the east, but we can get there over 2 days. But we'll need to double our night rotations. And if you see anything that looks like Mark, he's dead, guys. I'm sure of it. Preston responded. I was very afraid at this point. The sinking feeling that my idea could have gotten everyone killed. I took charge. We will do 15 miles today, and 20 tomorrow. We will hitch a ride back to the car. We'll burn our trash as we move. We'll burn the tent tomorrow morning. Let's go, now. We hastily packed what we could carry, and burned much of our non-essentials. We hurried throughout the afternoon and early evening, running when we could and walking as quickly as we could. The whooping call continued to seem to follow us at a distance. I didn't, however, see antlers or green eyes when I looked back. Eventually, we found a clearing that was decently sized, had good visibility and sticks. We hastily gathered firewood, all staying as a group, and we pitched camp. That dinner was cold jerky and dried fruit. Preston was unwilling to attract attention from smells, but he did create several pine tar torches and set them at the outskirts. We didn't say a word, but me and Preston took the first watch. Then Jamie and Preston, then me and Jamie. This continued every 2 hours until the daytime. As day broke, we heard screaming. Mark's voice came from the woods crying for help. Preston shook his head. It got him. We can't do anything about it. We burned that tent, and continued traveling throughout the day. I could see it, today, though. It didn't bother to hide itself by noon. The Wendigo was about 7 feet tall. Its limbs were blackened, 2 glowing green eyes set into a deer's skull with antlers. Soft whooping noises. It kept its distance. I pulled my revolver, and aimed at it, about 250 feet away. Firing, I hit it in the chest. It barely flinched. The thing turned and stared at me. Preston began to shout at it aggressively in his native language. It stopped, tilted its head, and then responded to him. I asked him, "What the hell did he say to you?" I asked him what he did with Mark. He responded, "Who's that?" Preston then grabbed my Mini 14 and fired repeatedly at him. This abomination seemed to get annoyed. I followed up with a well-placed slug to the chest from my Saiga. It howled in pain and dashed away into the woods. "We better run, I think," I remarked to the group. We ran for a good 20 minutes, when suddenly, in a clearing ahead of us, was a human silhouette. Naked, filthy. "Guys, it's me. You gotta take me back. I escaped that thing and have been running from it for the last day." It was Mark. I pointed my Saiga at Mark. "What happened to your clothes, Mark?" "Yeah, and if you're Mark, tell us the name of the school we went to," Preston said. He pointed the rifle at his head. "Come on guys, don't play around, it's me. I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I want to go home," he protested. Jamie shoot him in the leg with his revolver. Mark screamed in pain, "Unless you want the next to be your head, answer the fucking questions," Jamie shouted. That's when Mark's head snapped to Jamie, in a grossly unnatural fashion. I was paralyzed by fear as it appeared as if Mark was contorting and screaming in unnatural tones. I fired, repeatedly. All remaining shells in the magazine. It just seemed to shred the upper skin. Putting that on my back, I remembered, Wendigos hate fire. I grabbed my lighter and a can of bug spray, and I dashed at the thing that was once Mark, spraying it with the fire from my makeshift flamethrower. As I burned it, Preston laid down 2 entire magazines into it and then dumped the rest of his pine tar on it, and Jamie emptied his revolver. When it finally stopped screaming and moving, we were left with a mutilated and charred corpse, half Mark, half Wendigo. We all threw up. Preston began to butcher its corpse and said, "I've got to destroy the corpse. It's only right that I do this." For an hour, Preston burned and cut up the corpse, then cut the heart out. He put it in a plastic bag and then shoved it into his jacket. It took us another few hours to reach the highway. Preston sat and began to cry on the sidewalk as Jamie kept the hitchhiker thumb out. I sat next to him and asked, "What are you gonna do with the heart?" I had to take it to the reservation. There, my elders have to know these things are still out there. And we need to protect those from these monsters. He clenched his fist, "I'll wipe them out by myself if I have to. For Mark." By evening, a sympathetic farmer stopped and let us ride his bed into town. From there I paid for a cheap motel room, where we breathed a few sighs of relief. The next day, we returned to my car. Thankfully, it started, and we left the area around the forest easily. I didn't talk to Preston for several weeks after that. He eventually showed up at my house during the summer, and asked my father if he could stay the night. At the time, I still was living at home. My dad obliged. Preston told me that the elders were shocked, and told him that they'd amass a party and take care of it. They came back with the skull of 2 Wendigos, and 6 hearts. They also found scraps of Mark's t-shirt, surrounded by a pile of decaying gore. To this day, Preston, Jamie and me have had a pact to never tell anyone about the horror we witnessed. I only break this pact now, years later, and because we can safely say that this is behind us, for the present. My advice: if you hear whooping noises and see green eyes and antlers, run or fight it with fire. Guns can cause it pain, but only fire or silver can kill it. I pray that the abominations are wiped out one day, but I know in my heart that won't happen. 4th story. This story was shared by you/Darkraven. I think I have a Bigfoot problem. Throughout the days we take our 2 dogs outside to their kennels so they can get out of the house for a while and run and play and such. These are not small dogs. One is a black lab/husky mix and the other one is a full-blooded Staffordshire Terrier, pit bull. The kennels are placed at the edge of the yard near the woods. These woods are big, large enough to take a day to go hiking through them. Lately, when it gets dark, the dogs seem on edge. They will bark and whine toward the house to come in. At first, I figured they just wanted to get back into the house, but now I'm thinking they're actually scared. 3 nights ago when I went to get them it was already dark, but we have a security light, so it isn't pitch black or anything. I got to the front of the first kennel and noticed both dogs were being quiet. They always bark at me excitedly when I go to get them, but they were dead silent. This weirded me out a little, but not to the point of being scared. I will admit that there was a certain uneasiness in the air though, something I can't explain, but it sort of felt electric, like I was about to be shocked. The longer I was there, the more uneasy I felt. I started getting the first dog, the lab, out and heard a heavy snap in the woods near the kennels. I froze, the dogs froze. By this time I was so on edge that if someone had spoken I would have jumped, screamed, and possibly ran. The creepy feeling in the air just kept getting thicker. The lab had her bushy tail stuffed underneath her and was whining. This didn't make me feel any better. The pit bull was as far away from the woods as she could get, whimpering for me to come get her. I can only take one dog in at a time because they get too excited and will sometimes try to fight, so I avoid that at all costs. I felt so bad leaving the pitty there by herself, but I had to do it. As I walked away, she barked this high-pitched whining type of bark at me that I have never heard her do before. The lab couldn't get to the house quick enough. I went back for the other one and dreaded every step as her door is right at the base of the woods. I would have to turn my back to the woods to open her door and get her out. The air felt heavy and stale, with an unpleasant smell, like a dead skunk, as I approached the kennel. Another snap and I was about ready to run for it, but I didn't want to leave my dog, who had her head down defensively facing the woods. I could barely make it. To be honest, it felt like trying to walk through water. I was terrified by the time I reached the door. I heard heavy breathing behind me as I got my dog out. She was scared too but started growling behind me. I was frozen in place. The breathing continued for a minute before I heard steps started coming toward us. We both took off at the same time. A terrifying scream came out of the base of the woods. I didn't dare look back, I just ran. My pity pulled me all the way back to the house. I got in, flipped off all the lights and stared out the window at the woods. I could see something moving slightly, but just out of the light. It moved back and forth for about 5 minutes, then disappeared. It took me forever to fall asleep that night because I was so scared that every little noise freaked me out. The next night I went to get the dogs earlier, right around dusk. I thought all was good until I was getting my pitty out. A huge snapping sound, like a tree branch had just been snapped in half, rang out. It sounded pretty far away, so I just hurriedly got my dog and started toward the house. A few steps away from the kennel I heard something big start charging toward me from inside the woods. We ran again and it appeared to follow for so long, then retreated back. Now, every night since then I hear sounds coming out of the woods like branches breaking and being thrown around, knocking on trees and roaring. I am absolutely terrified. I no longer even take my dogs down, I just take them for walks during the day and make sure we are all in before dusk. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about buying a gun but I'm not sure it will help. 7th story. This story was shared by you/with love in her eyes. I know where black-eyed children come from. When I was a kid, my little brother and I visited my grandparents in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, every summer. It was a pretty boring town. As the capital of the Cherokee Nation, most recreational activities were related to the culture and history of the Cherokees. The last summer we spent there I was 11, that age between wanting so badly to be seen as a teenager, but still finding enjoyment in Bratz dolls. My brother was 8 and wouldn't settle down, unless he had his Nintendo DS. I didn't dread visiting my grandparents, like many children do. Other than the cultural shock that came from leaving our home in LA to the relatively small Oklahoma town, I loved spending time with my grandparents and so did my brother. They spoiled us with toys and ice cream. On a Thursday afternoon, my little brother and I were playing at the elementary school across the street from my grandparents' house. If you've ever been to Oklahoma, you probably know how quickly the weather can change. It's not uncommon for it to snow one day and be in the 70s the next day. This day went from sunny to cloudy, extremely quick. It didn't begin raining or lightning, so my brother and I continued to play, but these weren't normal clouds. They looked heavier and thicker. They were almost black. I'm still not sure if the clouds were some sort warning for what was about to happen, or I'm just trying to connect things. A girl who was probably 9 or 10 showed up at some point. She didn't have parents with her, but it was a fairly safe town and not uncommon for kids to walk around. She introduced herself as Ally. She was blonde and blue-eyed, but began enlightening us with old Cherokee ghost tales. With Tahlequah being the capital of the Cherokee Nation, many urban legends in other towns are actually true in Tahlequah. Most people's great-great-grandmas really were Cherokees, and the school playground we were currently playing on really had once been an Indian burial ground. She told us one particular grotesque story about the Deer Lady, who was a hair-broken woman that went insane and cut her legs off and stitched a deer's legs on her torso in place. Her final story inspired what we thought would be a fun adventure. She told us a chief's 15-year-old daughter had been brutally murdered by her white husband on their anniversary for flirting with another man. They buried her and out of respect, never removed her gravestone when the school was built. Ally told us it would take a bit of maneuvering, but there was a panel that could be removed and we could crawl underneath the school and see the gravestone. We were all in shape, so we began our adventure. To our disappointment, the panel had been screwed shut and it began to rain. My brother and I decided to go home. Ally, however, insisted that there had to be another way in. I tried to tell her that her parents would probably be worried and that it would be best for her to go home too, but she was determined to find a way in. My brother and I went into my grandparents' house and changed into some dry clothes, drank Kool-Aid and watched TV. While my brother and grandparents were watching The Fairly Odd Parents, I noticed I could still see Ally, drenched in rain, trying to find a way underneath the school from the living room window. Eventually, she did. I watched her crawl in, but I never saw her crawl out. We sat through an entire episode of The Fairly Odd Parents and half an episode Drake and Josh, so it had to have been 45 minutes. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I told myself she had to have come out a different way, or maybe she came out when I wasn't looking and finally drifted off. The next morning I woke up refreshed. I was certain Ally had found a way out. My grandparents took us to the carnival and to Brahms, the local ice cream shop. It was 6 o'clock in the evening when we got home and my grandma began cooking supper, while my grandpa took a nap. My brother and I were kids though, and still had lots of energy left. So, we went across the street to play some more and our grandma told she would call us when supper was ready. I told my little brother that I had seen Ally go underneath the school and asked him if he was up for an adventure. He agreed and I went to the panel that I saw Ally loosen. I loosened and crawled underneath the school and my brother followed. The reaming daylight flooded into the basement along with us, providing us with just enough light to see things directly in front of us. The ground was cold, wet dirt, and there were many pipes and old basketballs to crawl around. I immediately spotted 8 to 10 headstones, though. The first one was directly to the right of my brother and I, but the name was too faded to read. I was feeling kind of creeped out that Ally had been right and we were crawling over a bunch of dead bodies. I probably would have left, but my brother didn't seem afraid at all and I wanted to seem braver than him. So I crawled to the next stone. This one read, Andrew Cummings, and had a birth date of 1890 and death date of 1902. There was one to the left of it that read, Allison Cummings, and had a birth date of 1893 and death date of 1902, also. This freaked me out even more, and made me think of Ally, who had the same name and looked about the same age, as the dead girl several feet below me. My brother suddenly shouted, "Look! Something in the corner just moved." Before I could tell him that we should leave immediately, he shoved me out of the way and began crawling incredibly fast to the corner furthest from us. I could clearly see a couple of large figures moving, but couldn't make out much else. "They're probably just dogs, let's go," I told him. But as he crawled, I crawled right behind him, getting closer and closer to the larger figures, that began to look more and more like silhouettes of three people sitting against a wall, all with their knees to their chest. When they came into clear view, my brother turned around and crawled underneath me. I held him close to my chest. We were bothered, terrified. The first girl was clearly Ally, except she didn't look as lively as she had looked yesterday. She wasn't smiling and her hair was stringy. Next to her was a boy, who looked close in age to me and had no hair at all. He wasn't smiling either. Then there was a girl who looked more normal than Ally or the boy. Her skin was dark and her hair was so long it bunched up at the ground. She looked like she was about 16, but her facial expression was the scariest. It was one of absolute despair. The scariest part about all of them was their eyes. I could see my brother's eyes glowing, but none of their eyes glowed. It didn't even really look like they had eyes, just pits of darkness. Ally smiled and said, "Thank God, you guys came." The other two laughed. "Yeah, well, we're going to be leaving now," I said, trying my hardest to sound casual and not scared. All three laughed and the other girl spoke up, "No, you're not." Her voice had a confidence that mine didn't. I pushed my brother in the direction we came in and he began quickly crawling away. I heard my grandma calling out to us and called out to her to help us. All three of them suddenly stopped laughing. Ally suddenly looked scared. She said, "Leave right now and never tell a soul you saw us. You got lucky." We didn't have to be told twice and quickly crawled out. At dinner that night my brother and I chalked up our silence to it having been a long day and us being tired. We never played at the playground across the street again and rarely talked about the incident. 5 months after we left, my grandparents were murdered in their own home. A neighbor had said she had seen my grandma let 3 children into their home the day of their murder. A bald boy, a blonde girl, and a dark-haired girl. Cops were never able to find any leads and the case was eventually closed. Neither my brother nor I plan to visit Tahlequah or even Oklahoma ever again, but I know that it doesn't matter. I'm certain that one day they'll show up on my step too. I know I'll tell them to go away and I can only hope that will be enough. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.